The first day of NFL Combine drills is underway. A lot of drills to come on tomorrow and over the weekend. A lot to look forward to. Draft season is here, baby. And to talk all things Jets and all things draft, we are joined by NFL draft analyst Cole Thompson for the first time this draft season, all coming up here on a Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today?
ESPN writer, Mr. Rich Samini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Long.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back here into another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk on this Thursday, February 27th, 2025. I appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button and you are subscribed to the channel. It's completely free, and it helps us grow significantly here on the show. Really, we're getting close to 2,000 subscribers, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like I said, completely free and helps us grow significantly. I'm hearing that nobody can see us on the YouTube show, so let's try this. Give me 1 second. We'll be back. Let me know if you guys can see me now. Let me know if you guys can see me or hear me. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. I know. There we go. It seems like you guys can see me now on YouTube. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. As always, like I said, smash the like. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Completely free and helps us grow significantly. Today, joining us on NY Flight Jets Talk is NFL draft analyst Cole Thompson for the first time this draft season here on the show. Cole, what's going on?
Dude, can I just say I am so proud of you. I remember when
Thank
I
you.
first came on your show a year and a half ago and you didn't have any graphics, you didn't have any intro. It was bare minimum. And now you are turning into one of the best draft and Jets people that I know. I get giddy watching your career. I remember how I felt when I was your age. You're so much further along than Jake Asman and I ever were going to be. And if you are not subscribed to this channel, the fact that you only have 2,000 subscribers, shame. Shame on Jets community. Shame on Jets culture. They need to get this kid up to 50,000 subscribers because the number one Jets YouTube show is the Jake Asman show, and that's at 40. I want this one up to 50. How are we doing, brother?
Cole, you're the best. Appreciate all the kind words. And I went back and I found our interview. You were one of my first interviews, actually, and it's crazy to think just how much can go on in a year. I remember I had you on at the beginning of January because we were talking draft early, like the Jets do every single year. But at least they had the head coaching search this year, so we weren't doing mock drafts right away on January 15th or whatever. So we had you on in January, we had you on in March, and I'm super happy you were able to be here. Like I said, appreciate all the kind words. Appreciate all your support. I guess where I'm going to start overall, Cole, with the NFL Combine for you, someone who talks college football every single day, someone who, is an NFL draft analyst. How much stock do you really put into the NFL Combine when it comes to evaluating players? Do you put a lot of stock into it, the drills, the measurables, or you pretty much stick with what you see on tape and all the numbers?
There's a mix of both. You talk about some of the guys like an Abdul Carter not practicing this week. It to me is not that big of a deal. I look at what his production did during his last 2 years at Penn State. And keep in mind, this was a guy that was a linebacker that transitioned to defensive end and was one of the best pass rushers in college football 1 year playing the position. Like, I still see all the intangibles and traits that are going to make him a future All-Pro. If Travis Hunter didn't want to test this week, he doesn't have to, because you want to know why. What we've seen from him so far is a unicorn-esque type of player. The Mason Graham and the Kenneth Grant, whether it's due to injury, whether it's because that they just want to save it for pro day. I've seen enough on them on tape and then match that production over the last 2 years, because remember, they were part of that national championship team out in Ann Arbor. They came back for another year. They got better. They honed in on their craft. I have a good inclination on it. What really I look for when it comes to the NFL draft is the interviews that go on behind closed doors. That is where I think that you see a bigger, I would say, progress for players. Like, there's a rumor right now that Cam Ward met with the New Orleans Saints today. If he blows them away, remember, this is an organization that is going to start fresh with Kellen Moore, and they want Kellen Moore to be the guy. They want him to transform New Orleans back into a premier program out in the NFC South, and they want to get the quarterback that's very similar to a Jalen Hurts. So if he ends up wowing them in terms of what his intangibles are as a player off the field, you match that with the mechanics of what he's shown you on the field, maybe that's where the conversation of trading up. That's what I look for. A lot of these interviews and a lot of the conversations that you have behind the scenes that we don't really know a lot about until well after the draft, That's what this week for me is all about. Now, there's going to be some players that absolutely will rise. It happens every single year. Definitely some names that prove, hey, I'm a guaranteed first-round pick. Lock it on in. Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M. Dude's production in college. Minimal at best. But it was the way that they ran the defense at Texas A&M. Then you look at the intangibles on the field and you look at the numbers today, and it's like, if he goes anywhere outside of the top 12, it's mind-boggling at this point, just because of the type of player that he is. So it's little things like that. That's what I pay attention to. And then, of course, the interviews behind closed doors. Those are the most, I think, essential things that you get in Indianapolis at this point.
Cole, you mentioned Shamar Stewart there. That's someone Will Parkinson really introduced me to when he was on the show right after the Senior Bowl. He was very high on him, but at the same time, he's like, you're trying to find Daniil Hunter in the top 15, someone who's putting up 4 sacks a year at Texas A&M. So you're gambling on the intangibles, the traits that he brings to the table. And Will Parkinson was very big on, if he tests how I think he will at the combine, he is going to go high in the draft. And he had a great day down at the combine with his 40 time, his vertical, all that. So when it comes to Shamar Stewart, do you think he could be a potential fit for the Jets? My thing with the Jets is I want someone at 7. I don't want a quarterback at 7 because I want someone who's going to come in right away and be a starter.
Yeah, because you're smart. That's why. So exactly.
Last year when the Jets drafted Olu Fashanu, they had the luxury. That roster was stacked entering the draft last year. They had the luxury of trying to add a depth piece for the future and then trying to get a starter. This team's completely different scenario. You have holes basically every position, arguably, except the running back position. A very interesting running back draft class this year. So we'll get into that in a little. But do you think Shamar Stewart could be a potential fit for the Jets, or is that too much of a gamble?
So do you remember when Abdul Carter was getting mocked to the Jets and people didn't really like that move because they're like, why are we getting another defensive end? Why are we getting another pass rusher? Well, this is now the replacement for it because Abdul Carter's not going to be there at 7. So in the perfect scenario for me personally would be watching the Jets trade back just a little bit to get an extra 3rd round pick and then take him, say, at like 10. Like the Chicago Bears are in love with Ted McMillan or something like that, and they were to move up from 10 to 7. They give you a future 3rd. They're locked in on building for their roster for the long term. Maybe it's Will Campbell from LSU, just better the offensive line. And then you take a guy like Shamar Stewart because of Will is 100% correct on when you talk about a Shamar Stewart, his progress is going to be a lot like Daniil Hunter. Hunter, when he was coming out of LSU, was such a raw prospect. There were so many things to like about what his skill set was, his pass rush win rate, his hand usage, his center of gravity, his bend, his agility. But the numbers weren't as promising as what you would see. And he went in the 3rd round. And then when he got to the NFL, took him about 2 years. But then by the time he got to year 3 out in Minnesota, not only was he a future All-Pro, he was one of the most violent defensive ends in the NFL. And now he's getting paid by the Houston Texans. And he's only 30 years old, which is, again, 10 years in the league. And he's probably still got another 5 or 6, 7 if he really wants it. But I think that if you're banking on traits, a guy like Aaron Glenn, who's worked with multiple different pass rushers. Remember, he was in New Orleans when they drafted a kid out of Florida Atlantic in the 3rd round, i.e. Trey Hendrickson, who went on to become one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He's worked with Aiden Hutchinson. So I think that when you get a defensive-minded coach, the thought process is going to a defensive-minded player with the early selection. And I think that for the style of defense that you want to run, it would make sense. Now, the big question is, do you address the need in free agency? Because if you address a pass rushing need in free agency, whether it is a guy that you want as a number 3 behind a Jermaine Johnson and behind a Will McDonald, you can do that. But then you also got to look at the other thing is, what is the timeline for Jermaine Johnson to come back in? Which, again, for me at 7 is where I start looking around and saying, what are some other needs that you feel like you got to address right now? Does DJ Reed walk in free agency? And is Will Johnson going to test well at his pro day to where he's available at number 7 and you pair him with Sauce Gardner? Do you let Garrett Wilson get traded for a surplus of picks back in return? And then at 7, you take Ted McMillan. Like, those are some other little things that I look at. But from a talent upside standpoint, the 2 best pass rushers in this draft are probably Abdul Carter and Shamar Stewart with upside. With upside. Now, that's the big thing, is that upside. Production-wise, it's so hard to go ahead and project what Shamar Stewart can be because of just how limited he was. But if you go listen to the interview by Nick Scorton, defensive end from Texas A&M, I highly recommend that everyone does that before they start looking at his numbers. He talks about why they schemed it up properly and why the numbers didn't actually justify how impactful Shamar Stewart was. And if you look the last 2 years when he was at Texas A&M, in the limited role that he played, he was extremely successful at winning his one-on-ones, so much so that he would get double teamed more often than we give him credit for.
Now, Cole, Mike Green from Marshall's another interesting name. Reminds me a lot of
Yeah.
Bryce Huff, who was a homegrown talent with the Jets. Obviously, let him walk last offseason to the Eagles, where he didn't have as productive of a 2024 season. Thoughts on Mike Green out of Marshall as a potential fit for the Jets as a pass rusher on the outside? How do you compare him to Shamar Stewart? He was obviously more productive in college than Stewart, but where does he stand from an upside standpoint?
So let's go talk about this real fast, Connor. And this is the biggest lie that I hate when it comes to the NFL draft. Just because you went to a small school does not mean that you're a small name. Yeah. It doesn't.
Harold Fannin.
People will find talent in Division III, and if they're coached properly, they'll work their way up. Now, remember, he started his career off at Virginia. There was the little scandal that went on. It's been cleared from his time ever since then. He went to Marshall, learned underneath Charles Huff, was the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year, now going to be a first-round pick. I think that when number one, the one thing I will say is that the level of competition that he went up against versus Shamar Stewart is different. It is because if he went from the ACC to the Sun Belt versus playing in the SEC, when you're going up against future All-Americans like Tyler Booker, Will Campbell, Emory Jones, Calvin Banks, it's a little bit different of a style and approach that you go with. But I think the thing that really stands out about a Mike Green is his second opportunities attempts. If you go back and you watch his tape, when he loses a spin move, he can counteract it and work his way back upfield to get pressure on a quarterback extremely fast. He never gives up on a play. I think the other thing that's really important is that he keeps a very good low center of gravity to win on the outside, to where his bend allows him to kind of keep that lower tier body strength and work back upfield to win his routes against an offensive tackle, to whenever he catches him slipping, he can shift back inside and get to a quarterback. I think that also his hand placement is phenomenal. Very violent with his hands. Very good job of shooting, shucking, throwing him down, getting in the backfield, making plays against the run. And I will say the one thing that I do like about Mike Green, maybe a little bit more than I like about Shamar Stewart, is I think that Shamar Stewart is a great pass rusher and a good run defender. I think Mike Green is a great pass rusher and a great run defender. So he adds, I think, a little bit more value when it comes to playing on those early downs, and you know that you got to corral the box to be able to make a couple of time stops. I think he's going to be a top 12 pick. I would not be shocked if the Carolina Panthers at pick number 8 were interested in going after him because they want to get better with their pass rush. It feels like that they want to do everything possible to kind of make that next jump of Bryce Young, and they feel good about the direction of the offense. So maybe they go after that guy, that long-term option to pair as the Brian Burns replacement. But I think that the Jets would be interesting to see him there. I think Chicago's going to be in play for him. If the Saints stay at pick number 9 or number 11 or whatever the hell they are at right now off the top of my head, I think if they went defense, that'd be a name that would go after. But he is a name that he's not going to test this week. So again, a guy like Shamar Stewart's going to garner a lot more intrigue right now because we just saw him, and out of sight, out of mind, it does that way. But there's a lot, I think, of upside when it comes to what a Mike Green provides as a number 2 pass rusher and a low tier number 1.
Cole, appreciate you joining us. Smash the like. Make sure you are subscribed. Cole Thompson, Connor Long, here with you on a Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Keep the questions coming for Cole and I. We'll get to those. Pin comment at the top of the chat to call into the show. Let's see. My next question for you, Cole, involves Ashton Jeanty, someone who is just in a generational talent in my eyes. We're talking 5'9", 215 pounds, just such a compact frame, a top running back who I think deserves to be a top pick in this year's draft. I've been very big on, at the right price, Breece Hall. I don't think he's getting a second contract with the Jets. A 3 and a 5, I'll ship him off. I just think overall this running back class is super strong. Whether it's Jeanty in the first round, I'm super high on Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. I really like Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, Cam Scadaboo, DJ Giddens, Damian Martinez. A ton of running backs to really look out for in this year's draft, Cole. What do you think the odds are that the Jets potentially could shock the world now and draft Ashton Jeanty in this year's class?
Oh, boy. Okay, well, for starters, Connor, I got to go ahead and teach you one thing. You said the word generational. So now you are not allowed to say generational for the next 15 years when it comes to a running back, because that is the running back. That's your generational, dude. So I'm holding you to it. I hate that word. It is a pet peeve of mine, but whatever. He's worth it. Like, here's what I will say. I am never a fan of drafting a running back because I think it's a luxury position. Like, that's what it comes down to, is that you can find a running back in the 5th or 6th round that will give you 1,000 yards. The next year they'll give you 800, and then you can ship them off if you want, or they'll start to decline. You can get a running back in round 1 and they'll be Bijan Robinson. But they better be special if you're drafting them with that top pick. I think that Ashton Genty, regardless, again, of the level of competition that he played against, the consistency, the physicality, and I think the agility and the elusiveness with this open field speed is worthy of not only a first-round pick, I think it's worthy of a top 10 pick. I am fully in agreements with you on that. The thing, though, that I will say is that if you're drafting Ashton Genty at pick number 7, you better be trading Breece Hall. Exactly. You cannot have the two of them on the roster at the same time. And even for my money, if you were to say, well, we're drafting a guy like Genty because of we're going to let Breece walk in free agency. I don't want to do what we just saw in Detroit or what we've seen in Atlanta for the last few years. When there's a talent like this, you want him as your focal point. And I get it. It works out in Detroit because of what Jahmyr Gibbs provides. It's the opposite of what David Montgomery provides. And the way that they utilize Bijan Robinson is completely different than the way they utilize Ty Algier. But this is a 3-down back. This is a guy that can win out of the backfield as a receiving threat. He's done a decent job in pass protection. He's great with his vision in the open field to create second chance opportunities. He's extremely hard to bring down at the line of scrimmage. In fact, tackling him first rate is probably a bad decision to begin with. And so if the Jets were, I think, to trade Breece Hall, we can have this conversation about Ashton Genty. Mm-hmm. I think that we can have a conversation. The other thing, though, is how do you feel about every other position? Do you feel good about your linebacking?
Exactly.
Because if Jalen Walker's there, he's another name that we didn't see a lot of him this past season, but what we did see of him, or we haven't seen a lot of him at Georgia, but Georgia's pumping out linebackers. Like if you're in the southeastern region of the United States and you want to go to the NFL, you go to Georgia and you learn underneath Glenn Schumann, because if there's like guys such as Channing Tindall who weren't starters in their 3rd round picks. So like if you feel good about your linebacker position, you feel good about your cornerback position, you feel good about your interior offensive line, you feel good about your wide receiver room, you let go of Devontae Adams, you don't go bring in you bring in somebody else, and then you trade Breece Hall. Yes, let's have that conversation. But again, do you feel like that a guy like Ashton Genty is going to come on in immediately right now and put you in a better position when you have question marks on the quarterback spot, when you have question marks on the defense, and you're trying to establish the identity of your roster going into 2025? Plus, again, you have a running back that I think a lot of people still like in Breece Hall, whether or not he's around for the long term or not. And as you said, and I talked to a scout not too long ago, they said, if you need a running back, this is the draft to get one.
Exactly.
If you don't need a running back, this is still the draft to get one, because if there are 33 guys with draftable grades and there's not that many next year. So you're going to see a lot of teams that have expiring contracts draft a running back, and the Jets probably should, but I just wouldn't get them at pick number 7 if you're not letting Breece Hall go this season.
Cole, you mentioned some of the later round guys. I agree 1,000%. Overall, though, the depth of this running back class is just insane between, an Ollie Gordon type guy, a Taj Brooks type guy, Jordan James from Oregon, someone I think is being slept on a little during this draft process. So certainly there's a lot of different routes the Jets could go if they want to draft a running back this year. I just thought of it because as soon as people's, throwing out potentially Ashton Genty to the Jets, I think Lance Zierlein of NFL Media put that out in one of his mock drafts, and everyone went crazy.
He knows what he's talking about. I mean, he's made these predictions before, and he's been right on the money. So I don't doubt Lance at all whenever he comes out with his mocks.
For sure. So as soon as I saw that, I just dismissed the idea right away. I'm like, you kidding me? We have Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. And then I started thinking about it today as I've really been watching more and more of Ashton Genty's full games. And I'm like, this guy is really, really special. And I've been talking about the idea of potentially trading Breece Hall day in and day out. And then I was like, this could be great. But at the same time, I weighed in the cons. I was like, okay, you have so many holes, though, where you really want to create an extra hole by trading Breece Hall and then just replace him by Genty, pretty much just swapping the two. And then you're not addressing, like you mentioned, Cole, there, the linebacker issue, getting wide receivers in the building, tight ends. So my reaction to drafting Ashton Genty it would be the same as you. You better trade Breece Hall, and you better have a monster free agency when it comes to filling these holes, and you better have a great, rounds 2 through 7 of this year's draft, because this team has a lot of holes, unlike prior years, like I spoke about earlier, where they had the option, the roster was bolstered to the point where you had the option to take a depth piece in Olu fashion. It's a completely different scenario this year. So Ashton Genty to the Jets. We'll see. Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like, subscribe to the channel. Cole Thompson, Connor Long here with you on a Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. About 10 more minutes left with Cole here. We'll get to a few comments before we let Cole go. Then I'll stay on here a little longer, answer the rest of your questions. Take your calls. The big fella comes in with his 1 month member super chat and says, vote for Johnny Boy. 2025, Cole, what is your take on Maniac Madness?
Oh boy. Apparently I don't know the bracket well enough because I think Beastbreaker's going all the way in his division here, the Chicken Soup. I still believe that one of the Midnight Brothers is going to come out of the potato division. Is it the potato division?
Butter.
Yeah, the butter division. By the way, that is a Madhouse division. You have you have Gary Allen. Yeah, Gary Allen. You have both Midnight Brothers all in the same conference. Like it's like that one to me is crazy. I love that King Lowski is going up against his queen in the first round. That made me so happy. That call brought me more joy than I have had in a while. And then I don't know about the very last division. To me, that one feels kind of like up in the air. I know Lane Train's the favorite. I know that, he's the number 1 seed, but like, there's something about the number 1 seed that's not always a good thing. Like the number 1 seed doesn't always walk out of March Madness. They don't even sometimes make it to the Sweet 16. I think Lane can get upset in the round of 32. I really do.
Wow, that's a hot take coming from Cole there. I think a sleeper to watch, a sleeper matchup to look out for in the round to field of 64 there is Rick Kent versus Robert C. That is a great 8-9 matchup, and I think Rick Kent, who doesn't call that often, but he's a great listener here, great listener IFC with Jake. He's a well-respected Maniac, and there's not a lot of people I would vote for over Rick Kent, so I think that's one of the main things it's going to come down to as we narrow down the brackets for Maniac Madness.
I'm throwing as much money on whoever faces off against Neil because he was rude to you, and I just want Neil to piss off because of that. I have gone to your defense on that, and I refuse to allow Neil to go ahead and win that battle against me. I don't know. Here was the thing. Let me ask you, Connor. Gary, so we were talking about this. Gary as a number 2 seed. How we feel about that? Because I've already said for a while, and he's probably somewhere off, not want to listen to me with this. For a while, I've said Gary is like the epitome of a number 2. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Really solid overall contributor, good caller, just not, in my opinion, number 1 seed material. Do you think Gary's number 1?
Here's the thing. I think Gary's a 1 or a 2 because he's certainly a polarizing Maniac in the sense that he's able to come in and start fights no matter what, and he's entertaining. So he's a 1 or a 2. The thing is, he's a 1. For example, the ones everyone who got a 1 seed was deserving of it. And Bobby, Lane Train, Chiefs fan, and
Charles Gorman.
Charles Gorman. There we go. Those are the 4.
So
So everyone deserved a 1 seed. So I think based on the competition, Gary certainly deserves a 2 seed there. $2 super chat in here from Big Fella. Appreciate all your support. Cole, James Pierce ran a 4.5. He's gonna be nasty. Big Fella, I know you're a big Vols fan.
I say go Vols. What's so interesting with him is that he really needed a test well. There was people that were saying that his just production or his attitude was going to cost him. I talked to some people around the SEC. They told me that there was nothing to really worry about. He's a guy that works hard in practice. A source with the Tennessee organization said he was one of the most beloved players that we had on our roster for the last 2 years. He's not, in my opinion, at that same level as what Shamar Stewart can be right now. What Mike Green is, what even I would say, you could throw Abdul Carter in, but let's go into that Michael Williams conversation from Georgia. Williams didn't have a good year. He was dealing with injuries. Let's start off there. He wasn't fully healthy. He missed multiple games because of a lower body injury. I think that James Pierce could easily go before a Michael Williams. I could see Michael Williams having a really good pro day. James Pierce kind of take a step back and maybe not doing well in the interviews to where he falls below him. But the conversations that I've seen of James Pierce falling on day 2, it's ridiculous. It's so pathetically, honestly, in my opinion, misjudgefully bad because of Tennessee was the best defensive line in college football this year. For my money, and I've watched plenty of SEC tape, and I'll sugarcoat it with Tennessee fans. Vols Twitter is a cesspool. Connor, never go ever visit Knoxville. Please don't. Well, do, because Knoxville's awesome, but just never get sucked into Vols Twitter. You'll hate yourself afterwards. Their fan base is ravenous, but I will defend them. They have the best and the deepest defensive line, and James Pierce was the anchor of that.
There we go. Appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, smash the like, subscribe to the channel, keep the questions coming. Only about 5 minutes left here with Cole. So
You got me for 10. You got me a little
Perfect.
longer.
Appreciate you, Cole. We'll rapid fire through these final few questions here. Sharon comes in, says Tyler Warren will be an elite player. Warren's Warriors unite. Cole, thoughts on Tyler Warren?
What was it last year?
The Bowers
boys.
The
Bauer boys.
Yeah,
Bauer boys. I had to talk everyone off the ledge on that. And honestly, I don't regret it because of whenever you have an offensive tackle of Olufasanu's upside, Fashanu's upside, I think that's worth it. Still, I mean, I gotta admit, even I was shocked by how well Bowers played this year. Tyler Warren is a Swiss Army knife. I don't think that he is as good as a route runner as a Brock Bowers. I don't think his hands are as good as a Brock Bowers. What I will say is he's a better inline blocker. And if you heard him today at the media presser, he was talking about how the way he likes to play football is physical, like in the old school days with the running back like John Riggins from the Washington Redskins, now Commanders. Like, to me, that means something. And if the Jets were to feel really good about wide receiver and linebacker, really linebacker and the pass rush, and they feel good about where Jermaine Johnson is in his recovery time, if Tyler Warren is there and that feels like the best player that fits your team, I'm not going to rule it out. And honestly, I shouldn't. I mean, look at what Sam Laporta has done for an offense that worked in Detroit. And I'm not saying that he's Sam Laporta. I think that's foolish to go to that level. But I think that his upside could be Sam Laporta-esque. And to be fair, whoever is your starting quarterback, whoever comes in for the Jets next season, you want to have a security blanket. And what did Tyler Warren do for Drew Aller? He was the X factor. He was the Swiss Army knife. He was
the whole offense ran through.
He was mostly the whole offense in the passing attack throughout the season. So you got the reps underneath you. He's a guy that's a willing blocker. I think he offers value at the second and third level as a receiving threat. I don't think he is going to be to Brock Bowers' level, but Brock Bowers truly is a once in a style of a tight end that doesn't offer you a lot when it comes to inline blocking, but he's so elite at everything else.
He's a great pass catcher, Cole. I agree 1,000%. And I was big on the train last year of going with Olu-Fashanu at pick 10 and trying to find your left tackle of the future there. But it's so funny. Now, if the Jets like Tyler Warren this year, I'm fully on board with him. We're talking 6'6", 260 pounds, someone who's a yak machine, someone who I think who could do a great job of fitting into the Tanner Engstrand type offense. You mentioned Sam Laporta, what he's been able to do with the Lions. So while he might not be as stout of a prospect as Brock Bowers, like, for example, the offensive line, the top offensive tackles in this year's class are pretty much Will Campbell Jr., Kelvin Banks Jr., and Josh Connerly from Oregon. So the question that raises, would you rather have Brock Bowers and Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, or Josh Connerly, or Olu-Fashanu and Tyler Warren?
That's kind of... I mean, honestly, I would probably say it's the other way around. It's Olu-Fashanu and Tyler Warren. Because here's the thing. Connor, there are going to be people that say Will Campbell is a guard, and they may be right, but you're not going to know within his first year. Same thing with Kelvin Banks. Olu-Fashanu is a left tackle. Like, in my opinion, Olu-Fashanu is a left tackle. That is a guy that you are not moving inside until the very last second you have to. So if I can get a franchise left tackle and I can get a quality Pro Bowl-esque tight end, I call that a win. I call that a win. Here's what I will say, though. This is a very good class for tight ends. So let's just say you pass on Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
There are so many names. There are so many good names, dude, in this class. I love Gunnar Helm coming out of Texas. Elijah Arroyo from Miami is really, really good, finally fully healthy. I think Terrence Ferguson offers some value as like a Joker-esque role. Mitchell Evans, something about Notre Dame tight ends. Back when I was like your age, we would always see like the Notre Dame dude like Tyler Eifert and John Carlson. Evans is one of those dudes that I think could fall in that same line. So if you miss out at Warren at 7, it's not a deal breaker. There's going to be another name that you guys should be able to target in round 2 or 3.
Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like. Subscribe to the channel. Another $2 super chat here from the big fella. Cole, Vol's Twitter is heaven on earth.
I'm not dealing with this, big fella. I'm not. No. Vol's Twitter. No. Volunteer country. Knoxville. The land of the finest people that wear that gaudy orange I've ever seen is a wonderful location. I love Knoxville. I have told multiple people if there was one college town that I could live in for the rest of my life as a 31-year-old, it would be Knoxville, Tennessee. I love everything about Knoxville. I love everything about Neyland. I love everything about the culture that's set in a place like Neyland Stadium. But y'all's Twitter sphere is a disgusting cesspool filled with maggots and disappointed people that literally come for me whenever I say anything negative about Nico Iamaleava. So no. There is a giant difference between Knoxville, Tennessee, and Volunteers fans and Vol Twitter. We are not going down that road, big fella. I'm not doing it tonight.
Jets Worldwide are going to snowball in the building when it comes to making a draft pick. What overrules what? Potential or player stats? Don't say both.
Yeah. Okay. So what overrules what? I think in this scenario, just what Jets Worldwide is saying here, this scenario is potential because of if I can get a dude that doesn't put up more than 700 receiving yards in college, but he has elite route running. He is a good catch rate. He has a good catch radius, exceptional vision, and he blows me away with his knowledge. I can teach that. I don't know if just because you had great numbers in college that always will translate to the NFL. We see it all the time where there will be over 1,000 yards. I remember when Deonta Foreman came to the Houston Texans. He just won the Doak Walker Award at Texas, and he had a torn ACL. And after he came back from the torn ACL, he was never really the same type of player. But honestly, still, I didn't think that he was really going to transition the way to the NFL like others have. Like, I thought Cooper DeJean was always going to be a great cornerback in the NFL. I like, they were all like, oh, he's got to play safety. It's like, no, let him play in the nickel. If he doesn't do well at the nickel, let him try on the outside. And if all else fails, move him to safety. But let the guy play corner. Like, I knew he was going to transition. But then there's some wide receivers that we talk about that were really big time names in college that never hit their stride. But the stats would say that they belong inside the top 5, the top 15. Like, Bo Nix led college football last year in passing yards, and Michael Penix Jr. led in touchdowns. I still would tell you right now, neither was worthy of the number 1 overall pick at quarterback. Neither was the guy. It was always Caleb Williams, and it was always Jaden Daniels for the running. And I thought Drake May, who didn't have great numbers. I still believe he is QB2. He was QB2 for me last year. And so I still believe his potential can be a QB2 in the NFL.
Cole, appreciate you hopping on as always. You got any final thoughts?
Keep grinding. You're doing great work.
You, Cole.
I'm sorry that I have to run because I have my own live stream that I got to go to. I'm very proud of you. You're crushing it. And I will come on whenever you need me. You got my number. And just know that the Jets are in good hands with Aaron Glenn. Because number 1, he's a defensive-minded coach. And number 2, let me just throw this out here because if I'm not going to be gloom and doom like other people on the internet. You remember that the Texans sucked, and then they got a defensive-minded coach.
What were they, 1-15 with Lovie Smith? Was it 1-16? 3-4, something like crazy like that.
Something like that. 3 and something. 3-13-1 or something like that. They sucked with him. They go land 2 difference makers for their team. They do a decent job in free agency. They go to the playoffs. Last season, a defensive-minded coach gets hired to Washington. They were abysmal. They bring in Dan Quinn. They get some difference makers in free agency. They land themselves a quarterback. They go to the playoffs. You may not go and win the division, but if you land the right pieces with a defensive-minded coach, there's always possibilities that maybe the New York Jets are this year's Houston Texans and this year's Washington Commanders. Just saying.
Cole, appreciate you as always. We have someone backstage who wants to talk.
Yeah,
to you.
30 Let's seconds. Bring on Big Fella.
30 seconds. Let's hear him, Big Fella.
Hey.
The Dart Dude. The Dart
What do you want,
Dude.
Reggie White?
Hey, Nico's not ready yet, man. Nico is definitely not ready yet for to come out next year. I mean,
no, God, no.
He's definitely not ready. He's overthrown, and he really needs to work on his stuff. So, I'm not one of those. I'm not one of those guys, man, who like will come after you about Nico. It's a fact. He's just not ready yet.
No, Big Fella. I said this year Dylan Sampson was going to have to be the backbone of this team because I just didn't think that Nico was ready to take that step. And I got pushback saying, well, in the bowl game against Iowa, look at how it was like, guys, it's a bowl game. How many players opted out of the bowl game? If you're going to use that, that's fine. And he ended up being a really good problem at the very end of the year.
Yeah.
Like I thought Nico was one of the more mature players on that roster when we got from week 1 to week 14. And the offensive line was giving him trouble, and the wide receiver drops were abysmal. They got to give him better supporting cast, but I thought Dylan Sampson was going to be a breakout player in the conference last year, and he won. And he was.
Nico was one of the only guys who was fighting his ass off in the LSU game too. I mean, he was. He showed his stuff there, but I mean, he really does have to work. He has to work on his accuracy because he's missing people downfield, and it was not. He didn't take the step that I thought he was going to take. So
and the only thing I told Vols fans were, you could still go 9-3, 10-2, make the college football playoff, but you're going to trust your defense and your run game. They're like, nope, Nico's going to lead us high. I was like, can we not? And I'm trying to tell Texas fans right now, big fella, don't do this with Arch Manning. Like just enjoy the process about who the kid is and know that he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Yeah. Nico's not going anywhere. Arch isn't going anywhere. Let the defense, let the run game, let other players step on up and be the backbone of this roster right now.
Yeah, let Faison Brandon learn and back in Nico for a year or two, and that's it, you know?
Yeah.
Now, Deani Walker, man, that's my guy who I want in the second round. That's who I want. So
from Kentucky?
Yeah, from Kentucky.
Oh, I love the kid.
He's huge. He's huge.
Big dude. Big dude. I wouldn't rule it out. I think he's a day 2 player.
Yeah.
The best case scenario, I think, with a guy like Deani Walker would be move down, get an extra pick in return, get him like in the mid 40s.
Right.
Because of what's going to be really interesting is to see what is the run of defensive linemen. Like, you know who's going to go really early on? Mason Graham, Walter Nolan. What happens with Derek Harmon? What happens with Omar? What happens with Omar Nelson Lott? What happens with Darius Alexander? Like,
and Kenneth Grant too.
Yeah, and Kenneth Grant. Yeah. That too. By the way, big fella, what do you think of Mikey Matthews?
I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be good.
Good. Tell everyone in Volunteer Country, because this was my favorite wide receiver of the 2024 cycle. I love the kid coming out of Georgia. Like, I thought the way that we were talking about Jeremiah Smith, the way we were talking about like Ryan Wingo and Ryan, I was talking about Mikey Matthews. Like, I am excited to see what he can do this year. And
me too. I just hope Heupel allows Nico to throw to the wide receivers, you know, because he last year we had like tall wide receivers and he wasn't utilizing them. Thornton and who's the other guy?
Well, it was Thornton, it was Brazel, it was Brew McCoy.
Yeah, Brazel, that was
Squirrel,
it. Yeah.
It was Squirrel White. Brazel's gone. I mean, Brazel's back. Right. Stanley, the wide receiver, the other 4 stars in. Mike Matthews is in. Squirrel White's at Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State. Yeah, so yeah, we have a bunch of new wide receivers, but Mikey Matthews, he'll be good. He'll definitely be good.
Big fella. You have a bunch of wide receivers, and that's a good thing. Like when I talk about wide receivers, I get excited for Tennessee because I don't have to talk about the guys that were so abysmal, dropping easy passes. The Georgia game is one of the biggest. The Georgia game to me.
I know
how many 4th down perfect throws we saw from Nico.
Yeah,
and just drops by Dante Thornton and Brew McCoy. It drove me absolutely nuts. That was one of those few games. I was like, I will talk to you on another day about wide receivers.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah, we got to hit the big guys on the crossing patterns. It was open all season, and we just never did it. But,
who do you want at 7? By the way,
what?
Who do you want at 7?
That's a whole. You don't have enough time for that. So.
Gun to head right now. Who do you want? Before I go. Right now, you're on the clock.
If I have to, Will Johnson.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is the right way of thinking, big fella.
Toe injury doesn't concern you?
No.
Okay.
If I have to, Will Johnson. If we trade back, I want Jackson Dart. That's what I want.
He's the dart dude. Cole.
I'm the
dart dude. He's the dart dude.
Yeah.
And I nicknamed him Dart Vader last year when he was at Ole Miss, and I can't bring myself to do it. I can't bring myself to do it in round 1.
He reminds me of a Baker Mayfield coming out. He really does.
Okay, boys. I gotta run.
Well, yeah, Cole, appreciate you as always, my friend.
Thank you, Cole. Thank you, Connor.
Take care,
of course,
guys.
have a good night, you two. Ladies and gentlemen, Cole Thompson and the big fella checking in with us here on the program. Super fun segment with Cole if you're just tuning in. Joined by Cole for the first 40 minutes. At the end of the show, go back, rewind, listen some college football talk there at the end between big fella and Cole. Other than that, talking Jets every single night here on NY Flight Jets Talk. So smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. 46 of you guys in the building here on YouTube, only 34 likes, so please hit the like button please make sure you are subscribed. One subscriber away from 1,650. So hit subscribe, guys. Please, please, please. We're trying to 2,000 by the start of the draft. Hit subscribe, like the video, completely free. Helps us grow significantly. Keep the questions coming in. We'll get to those. If you want to call into the show, you could do so with the pinned comment at the top of the chat. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our guy Jack Talks Jets joins us here on the program. Jack, you're on NY Flight Jets Talk.
What's up, Connor? How you been?
Can't complain, man.
So I have some thoughts when listening to you and Cole talk about Breece Hall, right?
Yeah.
I have some thoughts on him. And I want to get your opinion on why you do not think they will get him a second contract. Because I feel like he, especially behind the terrible O-line he's had the past couple of years and the terrible coaching, especially last year, the interim head coach Ulbrich. I know he was more of a defensive mind, but still, I do not think he had the best coaching situation last year, and he still made the most of it. So I feel like I'm interested to see how good he is with good coaching, a new scheme. Maybe it'll work out with him this year. So I just want to get your thoughts on why you don't think the Jets will sign him to a second contract.
Well, Jack, the Jets have a lot of guys in line that they need to pay over the next few seasons, whether it's Jermaine Johnson, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson. I'd probably put all three of those guys over Breece Hall when it just comes to overall positional value, probably. And also something else I want to add. Sorry, I think we lost me here on the YouTube stream. Let me know if you guys can see me there. Some weird stuff with StreamYard, the way they're cutting my picture in and out. So I appreciate you sticking with us. Appreciate you guys being transparent in the chat. As always, Jack, back to what I was saying. I just think there's so many guys in line to pay. And you see the running back market nowadays, it's to the point where it's just rise, rinse, and repeat. It's boom, draft someone, run them into the ground for 5 seasons, get the most out of them, and move on. That's, I think, pretty much what the Jets are going to do with Breece Hall, just because I agree, see what he can do in an improved offensive scheme. Maybe if you even transition over to a more run-heavy offense with a quarterback combination of Tyrod Taylor and Justin Fields. So I certainly want to see what he could do. But, Jack, my question to you is, what has Breece Hall shown us that he's really worth top dollar for the running back position? You mentioned the numbers with the poor offensive line. I agree 1,000%, but I don't think I've seen a season where Breece Hall, the 2023 season was great, over 1,500 all-purpose yards, but there's nothing that Breece Hall has shown me yet that screams, this guy is the next Curtis Martin. You have to pay him now. He's the running back of the future. I just don't think we've seen that yet out of Breece.
Well, I think I just like his agility a lot. I know his footwork's gotten a little bit of issues over the past year, but I feel like
especially his vision too.
Yeah, deep down he's got that dog in him, though. I do feel like he can pour it out if he really steps up his game, because I see the potential in him. And I don't know if you agree. Yeah. The first 7 games before he got that ACL tear, I feel like he was front runner for offensive rookie of the year at the time.
He was 1,000%. 1,000%.
But and I feel like I don't know if the injury impacted him as well. I think maybe it did, especially that knee injury he had at the end of the season this past season. But I feel like I don't know. I think it's more of a feeling rather than stats. Obviously, stats have been a little low for him ever since the end of 2023. But I feel like I don't know. I just feel like he has a lot of potential in him, and I'm just interested to see how he works out with this offense. And if he doesn't work out, fine, ship him off. I don't mind, especially like you said, a 3rd, 5th round pick. If you're talking about this year, maybe next year, it depends if his value will go up or down. If he does not have a good year, I'm fine with shipping him off and having Braylon Allen be our RB1. So that's really my thoughts on it.
Jack, the thing is, if you don't move on from Breece Hall now and you wait till gamble on his potential at the end of next season, you let him walk for nothing unless you pay him that lucrative franchise tag and then trade him, which is ultimately going to hurt you financially. So at this point, I just think you collect your dues and you trade him for a 3rd and a 5th round pick if you can get that in what is an elite running back class. Like, my question to you, Jack, is who do you think is a better running back, Ashton Jeanty or Breece Hall?
Well, it depends, because NFL is a totally different game. You see Breece Hall in Iowa State, he was running all over the place. You could have called him a great running back in the college football, which he was, but I get it. He's not Ashton Jeanty's level in college football. I think Jeanty is a superhuman right now in college football. The problem is, though, right? So, like I said, it's a totally different game than college football, and we can't really depict yet who's better yet until Ashton Jeanty steps on an NFL football field. So right now, I'm still sticking with Breece Hall just because of the pressure that's put on him and the league that he's in, the situation that he's in as of right now.
I understand that, Jack. So, but let's say a 3rd and a 5th round pick. So you get a 3rd this year where you're able to draft essentially. Basically, effectively replace Breece Hall with a Quinshawn Judkins, a Trayvon Henderson, a Cam Scatterbo if he were to fall a little. And then you pick up an extra 5th round pick just to add more capital to fill out the overall positions in need. Would you take that, or are you going to gamble on his potential?
I would. I think especially if it it also depends on situational too. But I generally, if it's a good offer and it makes sense, then yes, go ahead. It's NFL's a business, right? It's not all about feelings, right? So what's best for business should be done. is basically what I'm saying.
Jack, appreciate the call as always. You got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to ask you a question about Aaron Glenn's culture in the Jets,
For sure.
right? So in the past, I feel like the past 2 years, I feel like Robert Saleh and the coaching staff have really been Aaron over team, right? If you've noticed that, because it's like they, they really listen to Aaron. They let him skip training camp, and which I don't feel like they should have. I get he's a veteran, he's been around for 20 years, but I feel you got to set an example for the rookies, right? And
Couldn't
the
agree
young
more.
guys. And I feel like with Glenn switching over to team over Aaron or players, right? If you get me, how much do you think that'll impact the Jets for, obviously I think it'll impact them for the better. But how much in total do you think it'll impact this culture? Do you think it'll actually make a culture, which is what Robert Saleh tried to do but failed? But ultimately, do you think Glenn will actually make a culture in New York?
The thing is, Jack, I feel like that shift has already happened, the way players have reacted to, Aaron Glenn's press conferences and all of that. But this is the way I'm going to describe how you build a culture in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You have to win to have a good culture.
Right.
Winning builds culture. Like, maybe you could do what the Lions did. I remember watching Hard Knocks in 2021. The Lions ultimately went 3-14 that season.
Mm-hmm.
They had a strong culture during training camp, watching, veteran guys like Jamal Williams, the running back, rally the troops. I remember watching that, and I said, I don't care what their record is this year. Dan Campbell is going to be the best coach in all of football in the 2020s. And Dan Campbell's made a strong case as why he should be a top coach in the NFL over the past few seasons. So I think it's really hard to sustain a strong culture if you continue to win 5 to 7 games every single season. So my answer to you, Jack, is I think the initial culture change of, wow, there's a new sheriff in town already happened after the introductory press conference and moving on from Aaron Rodgers. But I think it takes winning to build an entire culture.
Of course. And that's exactly what Rex Ryan did 14 years ago, which is why they built a culture. Unfortunately, it did fall and collapse, but ultimately that is what Rex Ryan did, and I could see where you're coming from.
That's why Rex Ryan had success, Jack. Excuse me. I don't even think Rex Ryan is all that good of a football coach, as crazy it sounds from an X's and O's standpoint. I'm big on that. He had two great seasons with the Jets, great seasons, bringing them to back-to-back AFC Championship games. Obviously, an unforgettable run for the franchise. But then after that, you start winning 4 or 5 games a season. Gets canned, goes up to Buffalo with a sack roster, couldn't do anything. He basically took Eric Mangini, who was really, really strong as a coach from an X's and O's standpoint, took that roster he built, gave him the jolt of energy, like you mentioned there, coming in, establishing the culture right away, and then boom, you're in the AFC Championship game in 2009, 2010. That's what Rex Ryan did.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree with you there, Connor. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Jack, appreciate calling in as always, my man. Peace.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Talks Jets checking in here on the program. Make sure you shoot him a sub, shoot him a follow. Jack Talks Jets on all social media platforms. One of the best Jets content creators out on the internet. Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like, subscribe to the channel, completely free. Helps us grow significantly. Keep the questions coming in. We'll get to those. Pin comment at the top of the chat to call in. Super chats will cut the line. South Philly comes in with 5 gifted memberships, and he gets a Jets chant. Where's it? Jets, South Philly, thanks so much. Memberships did not get distributed. Seems that we're maxed out, so those should get distributed later for a more. If you guys want to call in, not call in, excuse me. You guys always feel free to call in. Jet fan, NFL fan, college football fan, whatever. If you want to call in with the pin comment at the top of the chat. But my point was, now that the memberships are maxed out for tonight, I think a great way to contribute, which will still get us in our which will still get you a ticket into our raffle for next month. Every $2.99 super chats, and say you 50 super chats, however $50 in super chats, however many raffle tickets that ultimately equates to. So super chats also a way to get yourself in our membership raffle. South Philly, thanks so much for all your support. In Motion Football in the building. You guys only want call-ins from Jets fans. In Motion Football, feel free to call in if you're not a Jet fan. Doesn't matter to me. As long as we're talking football, we're having fun here on the show. Feel free to call in, my friend. Pin comment at the top of the chat to do so. Dixon in the building. Rappaport said Jari Alexander is a possibility to the Jets. If you're going to pay a big money cornerback, Dixon, I'd rather pay, as someone who Jack mentions here, who I was going to get into, a Chavarius Ward or a Carlton Davis. That's who I'd rather pay if you're going to pay a big money cornerback compared to a Jari Alexander type guy. So if you want to pay big money for a CB2, which I've been vocal on doing, go after Carlton Davis, who has the connection to Aaron Glenn, or a Chavarius Ward, who has the connection to Steve Wilkes. So there we go. Joseph comes in, says, Connor, great channel for a young man with knowledge. You have a great channel. I'm an old man, but love your channel. God bless. Keep up the good work. I wish you the best. Joseph, appreciate all your support here on the program as always. June has been coming after us in the chat since you're talking crazy about Hall. What? June, call in. You want to debate Breece Hall? Want to debate New York Jets? Call in with the pinned comment. Top of the chat. Love to have you on. June Smith, our guy in the building. Shoot him a follow at X. Does a ton of Jets Twitter spaces. Great stuff as always, June. Appreciate you tuning in. What's up, Connor? Hey, Cole. Sorry, June. We only had Cole for about 35 minutes. We had to run. So I'll just answer this question here. Says, do you see Garrett as a true number one option or a top tier number two? I think he's shown he's an average to above average number one option at the NFL level. I think has he really taken his game to the next level to the point where he's in a Amon-Ra St. Brown type receiver, someone who's that productive week in and week out? No. But if you're going to pay him 4 years, $120 million, the same extension that Amon-Ra St. Brown got with the Lions, you're banking on him being that guy. So I would here's the thing. I think he's average to above average, but he's quarterback proof. He's hit 1,000 yards every single season with the Jets. Homegrown first round pick. Like I said, all these different quarterbacks: Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, Tyrod Taylor, all these names. So I think you pay him no matter what, though. I think he's shown he's quarterback proof, which is very, very important. Caden Jitchip has a Mason Graham and get Kenneth Grant, who's bigger. What is he? What is Kenneth Grant? 339 pounds, I think they have him listed at. Someone who's gonna absolutely tear it up in the running game. Kenneth Grant, I wouldn't mind him at 7, but if you can get him, you could trade back to like pick 11 to 15, that type range. I'm all in on Kenneth Grant. Nick Teodoro, Nick T in the chat. Connor, how far can we trade back for Dart? Late first would be there. I'd love that trade down and draft value. Nick, you know my stance on Dart, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. How far could you probably trade back? Late first round things. I don't think Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, if Dart is their guy, they zone in on Dart and they say he is going to be the next franchise quarterback for the Jets. We love him. We want to take him. Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji don't strike me as the type of guys to pass on him and try to trade back in the hopes of him being there. I think if you have your franchise quarterback on the board, you take him. That's the way I view, drafting quarterbacks at the NFL level. Reese, should we get Cam Ward? If he's there at 7, I think about it, but I'm not trading up for Cam Ward. He's a great quarterback. He's my quarterback 1 in this year's class. I just don't think he's worth, giving up a huge package to trade up for. Nick, if we're talking trade down in 2028, we still get Dart with a boatload of picks. If we get a 1 next year and a 3 this year to replace Adams' pick, would you do it? I would accept that pick if you're not taking Dart. Like, if we're talking to trade down to 2028, let's see this, and can still get Dart with a boatload of picks and get a 1 next year and a 3 this year to replace Adams' pick, would you do it? No, because you're not selecting a first round guy. That means you're trading back from 7. The only scenario I would potentially think about it, which I think is still bananas, you make your pick at 7 and then you trade back into the first round. I'm not giving up 7 in any way, shape, or form to trade back and draft Jackson Dart. And that goes back to my point. If he's there at 7 and you think he's your guy, you take him. That's how the NFL works. Caden draft Cam Ward, Arroyo, Sebastian Castro. Just spoke about Ward. Arroyo, great rapport with Ward, 6'5", 250 pounds. Really, really solid tight end. And then Sebastian Castro, talking second, third round guy, safety out of Iowa. Wouldn't mind him either. Safety is certainly a massive need for the Jets. So they could address that by drafting 1 to 2 guys during the draft, obviously, and then signing another guy in free agency or 2. That's a great way to fill the hole. Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like, subscribe to the channel. Completely free, helps us grow significantly. Going to wrap up here soon on this Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. So last chance to get in on the conversation by calling in with the pinned comment at the top of the chat. Last chance to get your questions in here before we wrap. 46 of you in the building. 40 likes. Please hit the like. Please make sure you are subscribed. Back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Jeremy of Jets Chaos will be joining us here on the program. Still working on some fun plans for Saturday and Sunday. Stay tuned. We got some really, really exciting content that'll be coming up on Sunday. But Saturday, still working with a few things. We're trying to get a guest in place. When we do the weekly show with Tigo, that'll be on his channel. So I'll guarantee you Saturday at 8:15, I will be on with Tigo on his channel. I'll post a link on Twitter and in the Discord. So join the Twitter, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord. If you haven't already, that's where you can get some exclusive channel updates, find out about interviews ahead of time, and have the opportunity to ask these pre-recorded guests. When we do pre-recorded interviews with certain guests, by joining the Discord, you have the opportunity to ask them questions. So I'll throw that link in the chat for the Discord. Appreciate all your support as always. It's completely free. Great way to support the show, and it comes with a lot of exclusive perks. So join the Discord. Haven't already. We're about 45, 50 people in there, so join it. Completely free. Great way to support the show, like I said, and you guys get a lot of perks out of it, so highly recommend that. Like I said, guys, back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Jeremy of Jets Chaos, but that'll do it for me. Tonight's Connor Long signing off here on another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Thursday, February 27th, 2025. JTS Jets, Jets, Jets.